Imagine discovering that everything we thought we knew about the origins of the Egyptian pharaohs was completely wrong. Imagine that a single DNA analysis could rewrite thousands of years of history and reveal secrets that the desert sands had held for millennia. Well, that's no longer fantasy. Recently, scientists managed to extract and analyze DNA from royal Egyptian mummies, and the results are absolutely revolutionary. What they discovered will shock you and forever change the way we view one of humanity's most fascinating civilizations. If you're curious to discover these stunning historical revelations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me what time you're watching this video. Now, get ready for a journey through time that will challenge everything you thought you knew about Ansi and Egypt. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and Egyptologists have debated intensely about the true origins of Egypt's first pharaohs. Were they native Africans, descendants of Middle Eastern peoples, or perhaps the result of a complex mix of different ethnic groups that settled along the Nile Valley? These questions have plagued the academic community for generations, spawning contradictory theories and heated debates that never seem to reach a definitive conclusion. Traditional archaeology has provided us with fascinating clues through artifacts, hieroglyphics, and monumental structures, but it has always been missing that crucial piece of the puzzle: direct biological evidence. How could we truly know where the founders of one of the most powerful and enduring civilizations in human history came from without examining their own genetic material? It was like trying to solve a criminal mystery without access to the suspect's fingerprints. But everything changed when revolutionary advances in DNA sequencing technology made it possible to extract and analyze genetic material from extremely ancient human remains. For the first time in history, scientists were able to literally read the genetic code of ancient Egyptians, unlocking secrets that had been written in their own cells for thousands of years. The process was anything but simple. Extracting DNA from mummies over 3,000 years old is an extremely delicate and complex task. The desert heat, the mummification process, the passage of time, and exposure to various environmental elements significantly degraded the genetic material. It was like trying to recover a text written on paper that had been left exposed to the sun, rain, and wind for millennia. Many scientists doubted that it would be possible to obtain viable DNA samples from these ancient mummies. However, an international team of researchers refused to give up. Using ultra-advanced laboratory techniques and state-of-the-art equipment, they managed to extract small fragments of DNA from mummies found at archaeological sites along the Nile Valley. Each sample represented a unique window into the past, a direct glimpse into the genetic makeup of ancient Egyptians. What the scientists discovered was absolutely astonishing. By analyzing the mitochondrial and nuclear DNA of these ancient mummies, they were able to trace the migration routes and ancestral origins of the first pharaohs and ruling elite of ancient Egypt. The results contradicted many established theories and revealed a history of migration and interbreeding far more complex than anyone had imagined. One of the most shocking discoveries was that the early pharaohs had a significantly different genetic makeup than the modern Egyptian population. This suggested that there had been dramatic changes in Egypt's population composition over the millennia, likely due to invasions, migrations, and political shifts that fundamentally altered the region's genetic makeup. Even more striking was the discovery that many early pharaohs shared genetic markers with populations from the Middle East and the Levant, indicating ancestral connections with people living in present-day Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Israel. This not only revealed the migration routes of the ancestors of Egyptian royalty, but also demonstrated the cosmopolitan and interconnected nature of the ancient world. But the story becomes even more fascinating when we examine the genetic differences between different periods of Egyptian history. DNA extracted from mummies from the pre-dynastic period showed distinct genetic patterns from those found in mummies from the Old Kingdom, which in turn differed from mummies from the Middle and New Kingdoms. This suggested that the genetic makeup of the Egyptian elite changed over time, reflecting different waves of migration, conquest, and dynastic change. A particularly intriguing discovery concerned the mummies of the famous Ptolemaic dynasty, the descendants of Alexander the Great, who ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries. DNA analysis confirmed that these pharaohs were predominantly of Greek and Macedonian descent, but also revealed evidence of interbreeding with local Egyptian populations over the generations. The researchers also made surprising discoveries about the family relationships between different pharaohs through genetic analysis. They were able to confirm or debunk theories about kinship that Egyptologists had debated for decades. In some cases, mummies believed to be brothers or father and son turned out to be genetically unrelated, while other mummies revealed unexpected family connections. One of the most revealing analyses was performed on the DNA of mummies from the 18th dynasty, including members of Tutankhamun's family. The results revealed a complex pattern of consanguineous marriages, confirming dynastic practices aimed at maintaining the purity of the royal line. However, they also revealed that even these highly inbred royal families had diverse ancestral origins, the result of migrations and interbreeding that occurred in previous generations. What makes these discoveries even more impressive is how they align with archaeological and historical evidence that previously seemed contradictory. For example, certain cultural practices, artistic styles, and religious traditions that seemed to have foreign origins now make more sense when understood in the context of the mixed genetic origins of the early pharaohs. The analysis also revealed fascinating information about the health and physical characteristics of ancient pharaohs. Some genetic markers indicated predispositions to certain diseases, explaining medical conditions documented in ancient texts. Other markers provided clues about the physical appearance of these rulers, including eye color, hair texture, and skin tone. But perhaps the most revolutionary discovery was the identification of genetic markers that suggest the earliest pharaohs may have had ancestral connections with people from far more distant regions than previously thought. Some DNA fragments showed similarities with populations from Central Asia and even the Indian subcontinent, suggesting extremely ancient and extensive migration routes and trade connections. These discoveries also shed new light on the process of Egyptian unification. Genetic evidence suggests that the unification of the lands of Upper and Lower Egypt was not only a political and military event, but also involved the interbreeding of genetically distinct populations inhabiting different regions of the Nile Valley. One of the most profound implications of these discoveries is how they challenge modern concepts of ethnicity and nationality when applied to the ancient world. Ancient Egypt emerges from these analyses not as an ethnically homogeneous civilization, but as a melting pot of diverse peoples and cultures that fused over millennia to create one of the most sophisticated societies of antiquity. Scientists have also uncovered evidence that there were at least 3 major waves of migration that significantly impacted the genetic makeup of the Egyptian elite. The first occurred during the pre-dynastic period, when people from the Middle East settled in the Nile Valley. The second occurred during the Middle Kingdom, possibly related to invasions and political changes. The third occurred during the Ptolemaic period, with the arrival of Greek rulers. But the discoveries don't stop there. The analysis also revealed that different regions of Egypt had distinct genetic makeups, suggesting that migration and interbreeding did not occur uniformly throughout the territory. Upper Egypt showed different genetic patterns than Lower Egypt, and certain regions retained genetic characteristics closer to sub-Saharan African populations, while others showed greater influence from peoples from the Middle East and the Mediterranean. A particularly intriguing discovery was the identification of rare genetic markers that appeared in several different dynasties, suggesting that certain family lines maintained political influence over centuries, even when they did not directly occupy the throne. This indicates a much more complex genetic and political continuity than traditional historical records suggested. Researchers have also found evidence that ancient Egyptians were far more mobile and cosmopolitan than previously thought. DNA analysis has shown that even mummies buried in local cemeteries had diverse ancestral origins, indicating constant movement of people throughout the Nile Valley and beyond. Another surprising revelation concerned the mummies of priests and high-ranking officials. Many of them showed genetic makeups similar to those of royalty. suggesting that positions of power in ancient Egypt were often held by people of specific lineages, creating a genetically interconnected ruling elite. The analysis also provided insights into the marriage practices of Egyptian royalty. While consanguineous marriages were well documented in historical texts, DNA revealed that these practices were even more complex than previously thought, with specific marriage patterns aimed at maintaining certain genetic lines within the royal family. One of the most exciting discoveries was the identification of DNA that may be linked to specific pharaohs mentioned in ancient texts, but whose mummies have never been definitively identified. Through genetic comparisons with mummies of known relatives, scientists were able to make tentative identifications that may solve long-standing archaeological mysteries. The results also revealed information about the causes of death of several pharaohs. Some genetic markers indicated predispositions to specific diseases, while others provided evidence of violence or trauma, confirming or contradicting historical theories about how certain rulers died. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these discoveries is how they demonstrate both continuity and change in Egypt's genetic makeup over thousands of years. The analysis showed that while there was continuity within certain lineages, there were also dramatic changes at different periods, reflecting the complex historical forces that shaped Egyptian civilization. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond Egyptology. They provide insights into patterns of human migration, the development of complex civilizations, and the dynamic nature of ethnic and cultural identities in the ancient world. They also demonstrate the power of modern science to unravel historical mysteries that once seemed insurmountable. These findings also have important implications for our understanding of human genetic diversity and how populations have adapted to different environments throughout history. The Nile Valley, with its strategic position between Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean, served as a crucial corridor for human migration and genetic exchange. As DNA analysis technology continues to advance, we can expect even more groundbreaking discoveries about the ancient Egyptians and other ancient civilizations. Each new technique allows us to extract more information from ancient DNA fragments, revealing ever more precise details about our ancestors. What makes these discoveries even more impressive is how they illustrate the interconnected nature of the ancient world. Far from being isolated civilizations, the ancient Egyptians were part of a complex network of peoples that spanned continents, exchanging not only goods and ideas, but also genes through migration, marriage, and conquest. The revelations about the genetic origins of Egypt's earliest pharaohs represent only the beginning of a revolution in our understanding of ancient history. As more mummies are analyzed and new techniques are developed, we can expect even more surprising discoveries that will continue to rewrite history books and challenge our assumptions about the past. These discoveries remind us that history is far more complex and fascinating than any simplified narrative can capture. Egypt's earliest pharaohs emerged not as mythical figures, but as real people with complex family histories, diverse ancestral origins, and connections to peoples across the ancient world. Their stories, written in their very DNA, continue to amaze and inspire us thousands of years after their deaths. But let's delve even deeper into these extraordinary discoveries. One of the most shocking revelations came from DNA analysis of mummies found at Abydos, Egypt's ancient royal cemetery. Scientists discovered that several mummies dating back to the pre-dynastic period had genetic markers indicating ancestry from the Anatolian region of what is now Turkey. This suggests that some of the founders of the earliest Egyptian dynasties may have been descendants of people who migrated along extremely ancient trade routes, connecting Asia Minor to the Nile Valley across thousands of kilometers. This discovery is particularly fascinating when we consider Egyptian legends and myths about their own origins. Ancient texts speak of gods and kings who came from distant lands to establish civilization in the Nile Valley. For centuries, archaeologists interpreted these stories as pure mythology. But now DNA is revealing that there may be more historical truth to these ancient narratives than we ever imagined. Researchers also made surprising discoveries about genetic diversity within royal families themselves. Detailed analysis showed that even brothers and sisters from the same royal dynasty often had slightly different genetic makeups, indicating that royal marriages often involved people of diverse genetic backgrounds, even when they remained within elite circles. A particularly intriguing discovery was made by analyzing the DNA of mummies of Egyptian queens. Many of these powerful women showed genetic markers that differed significantly from their pharaoh husbands, suggesting they came from different regions or family lines with distinct ancestral origins. This indicates that royal marriage in ancient Egypt was often used as a diplomatic tool to forge alliances with different ethnic groups and regions. Scientists have also discovered evidence that there were periods in Egyptian history when the genetic diversity of the ruling elite increased dramatically. These periods often coincided with military expansions, conquests of new territories, or periods of political instability when new groups took power. It's as if we can literally see Egypt's political history reflected in the DNA of its rulers. One of the most revealing analyses was conducted on mummies from the city of Akhetaten, the capital built by the heretical pharaoh Akhenaten. The DNA of these mummies revealed a unique genetic makeup that differed from both previous and later dynasties. This suggests that Akhenaten and his inner circle may have had origins or family connections very different from the mainstream of traditional Egyptian royalty, which may partially explain his radical religious and cultural reforms. Even more fascinating was the discovery that some mummies of nobles and high-ranking officials had DNA showing ancestry from what we now know as Sudan and Nubia. This confirms that ancient Egypt maintained close political and familial connections with the Nubian kingdoms to the south, and that these connections often translated into interdynastic marriages and the exchange of ruling elites. Researchers also made unexpected discoveries about the longevity of certain genetic lineages within the Egyptian elite. Certain DNA sequences appeared consistently in mummies from different dynasties separated by centuries, suggesting that certain families held positions of power and influence for much longer periods than traditional historical records indicated. A particularly surprising revelation came from the analysis of mitochondrial DNA, which is transmitted only through the maternal line. The results showed that many pharaohs from different dynasties shared similar maternal lineages, indicating that Egyptian queens and royal women often came from a relatively restricted gene pool, possibly preserving specific family and cultural traditions through generations. Scientists have also discovered evidence of genetic modifications that may be related to adaptation to the unique environment of the Nile Valley. Some genetic markers found in the royal mummies indicate adaptations related to resistance to tropical diseases, tolerance to extreme heat, and even characteristics related to the digestion of foods specific to the ancient Egyptian diet. But perhaps one of the most revolutionary discoveries was the identification of genetic markers that suggest some pharaohs may have had very different physical characteristics than traditionally imagined. Some analysis indicated genetic predispositions for above-average height, robust bone structure, and even facial features that differed significantly from traditional artistic representations. The researchers also found intriguing evidence that the practice of mummification may have selectively preserved certain types of DNA better than others. This means that the genetic information we're obtaining may be partially biased in favor of certain DNA sequences that are more resistant to degradation, potentially altering our understanding of the true genetic makeup of ancient Egyptians. One discovery that caused particular commotion in the scientific community was the identification of DNA sequences that appear to be linked to specific cognitive abilities. Although extremely controversial and still debated, some researchers suggest that certain genetic variants found in pharaoh mummies may be associated with traits such as exceptional memory, mathematical abilities, or leadership abilities. Scientists have also made significant progress in reconstructing complete family trees of Egyptian dynasties using only DNA evidence. These genetic family trees often contradict traditional historical records, revealing unexpected family relationships and correcting errors in dynastic chronology that have persisted for decades. A particularly fascinating area of research has Then the DNA analysis of royal child mummies. These analyses have revealed information about royal infant mortality, child-rearing practices, and even evidence of possible selective infanticide. Based on genetic characteristics or deformities, the researchers also found that different regions of the mummies' bodies preserved DNA differently. For example, DNA extracted from teeth often showed better preservation than DNA from soft tissues, while DNA from long bones sometimes contained different information than DNA from skull bones, suggesting that different parts of the body may tell slightly different genetic stories. One of the most exciting applications of these discoveries has been in the identification of unidentified mummies. Using DNA databases of known royal mummies, scientists were able to identify several mummies that had lain unidentified in museums for decades, revealing that some were actually royals who had been lost to history. Researchers have also made surprising discoveries about ancient Egyptian medical practices through DNA analysis. Genetic evidence from several mummies has revealed signs of ancient medical treatments, including possible primitive gene therapy, complex surgeries, and even evidence of organ transplants that were far more sophisticated than previously thought. A particularly intriguing area of research has been the DNA analysis of mummies found with artifacts or inscriptions indicating foreign origin. Many of these mummies have been confirmed through DNA to be indeed of non-Egyptian origin, but others have surprisingly turned out to be genetically Egyptian, suggesting that cultural identity and genetic identity did not always coincide in the ancient world. Scientists have also uncovered evidence that some pharaohs may have suffered from rare genetic conditions that dramatically affected their physical appearance. These findings may explain some of the more unusual artistic depictions of certain pharaohs, including the famous elongated depictions of Akhenaten and his family. Another fascinating aspect of research has been the DNA analysis of sacred animal mummies found in royal tombs. These analyses revealed that many of these animals were carefully selected based on specific genetic characteristics, and some even showed evidence of deliberate inbreeding to maintain certain physical characteristics considered sacred. Researchers have also made progress in understanding how Egyptian religious practices may have influenced mate selection and marriage practices. Some specific DNA sequences appear to correlate with certain religious roles or associations with specific gods, suggesting that genetics and religion were closely intertwined in ancient Egyptian society. One of the most exciting recent discoveries has been the identification of DNA that may be linked to the ancient Egyptians' famed construction capabilities. While still highly speculative, some researchers suggest that certain genetic variants found in mummies of pharaohs and royal architects may be associated with exceptional spatial and mathematical abilities that would partially explain their extraordinary architectural feats. The analysis also revealed information about the pharaoh's diet and lifestyle through genetic markers related to metabolism. Some mummies showed genetic adaptations to diets rich in specific proteins or fats, while others indicated predispositions to certain types of physical activity or sedentary lifestyles. Scientists have also discovered that DNA preservation in Egyptian mummies varies dramatically depending on the historical period and the mummification techniques used. Old Kingdom mummies often preserved DNA better than mummies from later periods, possibly due to differences in embalming techniques or materials used. One area of research that is just beginning to be explored is the DNA analysis of microorganisms found in mummies. These microorganisms can provide information about ancient diseases, environmental conditions, and even hygiene and medical practices of the time. As more mummies are analyzed and techniques become more sophisticated, we are beginning to build an increasingly detailed and nuanced picture of the genetic makeup of the ancient Egyptian elite. Each new discovery adds more pieces to the complex puzzle of the origins and evolution of one of the most fascinating civilizations in human history. These groundbreaking revelations about the DNA of Egypt's earliest pharaohs not only rewrite our understanding of Egyptian history, but also offer profound insights into the nature of identity, power, and cultural continuity in the ancient world. They demonstrate that Egyptian civilization was far more cosmopolitan, diverse, and interconnected than we ever imagined, and that its origins are rooted in a complex tapestry of migrations, cultural exchanges, and adaptations that spanned continents and millennia.